Next. So life is like this. The good lifestyle, they are like ladders, and bad lifestyle, like smoking and drinking, they are like snakes. So please see to it that you go up the ladder and at least reach 100 years of your life. Otherwise, the snakes are there all over, and they will end the life as I told you. Next, please. So this is a Greek physician, the first physician ever, which was described in the history, and he said, "First, do no harm." That is called primum non nocere in Greek. So the whole idea is, if you cannot do something good, please do not harm a patient. Next, please. So actually, the whole thing begins now after this introduction, which I hope you must have all got it very clear. And this is what I really preach, that those 5, 6, 7 slides were very important, and especially whenever I give lecture anywhere in the world, I see to it that the first introduction is like this, and people understand the logic and philosophy of life. And then this is what I want to tell you for today's topic. This is a 19. You can see the red marks, 19-year-old girl and 216 blood sugar, not acceptable, isn't it? And the birth weight was 4.5 kilogram. So all these thing has got a meaning. Next, please. Yeah, and the mother was type 1 diabetes. The paternal grandfather had diabetes, and I think the sister who had diabetes, probably type 2. Next, please. A BMI was 17. Characteristic, you can make out if 17 kilogram, and pulse was 80. I mean 17 kilogram per meter square. That is a very thin, lean person, not a very obese person. Pulse was 84. BP was quite normal. Peripheral pulses were okay. The clinical examination was normal. Next, please. This is a typical case, what we are describing. Laboratory investigations were no signs of insulin resistance. So insulin resistance was not there, and that means acanthosis and all these things, which were representing clinically or signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. The commonest form of pancreatic beta cell antibodies, that is GAD antibodies, that is glutamic acid carboxylase antibodies, were absent, which were typically present in type 1 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is not there, type 2 diabetes is not there. C-peptide was reasonably normal, lipids were normal, HbA1c was 9, that means person had sugar, person had no signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes, person had no signs and symptoms of type 2 diabetes. Next. So then finally we have to diagnose what is this. Patient has high sugar, patient has no type 1, no type 2, which is consisting of almost 99% of the diagnosis of diabetes. So we'll have to find out what is this, so that we can treat it appropriately, and then in future we can have a genetic counseling, so that they do not have progeny which goes around with this kind of problem and produces progeny which does not have this problem, and probably they do not suffer in future. So genetic counseling, genetic test is very important. Subsequently, genetic counseling is very important. So mutation in HNF4A was identified, confirming after the genetic test, and the mother who had C-peptide, absent of C-peptide, that means mother was suffering from type 1, I told you, and the sister had impaired glucose tolerance, that means type 2 diabetes, and father was normoglycemic, but he was the carrier at the same time. Next, please. Now, I want to tell you HNF to most of the people who all of you may be knowing, but at the same time, let me tell you very clearly that HNF4A means hepatic nuclear factor 4 alpha. So, if this particular patient in question, 18 years old girl, she had HNF4A mutation. The sister on the left hand side, she had impaired glucose tolerance. The mother was type 1 diabetes. Father was normoglycemic, but his father was the carrier. And usually 2 generations of these people are diabetic. Next, please. So family history is very important here. So my dear friends, when there is a gallop, you hear a gallop and you think of always horse. Next, please. So most of the time you are right. You are seeing a horse. So when there is a person with 200 plus sugar, you think of type 2 diabetes, or if the GAD antibodies are there, you think of type 1 diabetes. You are practically right. But here what happened next? But sometimes they could be zebra, not horse. So most of the time, 99% you hear gallop, it is horse, but sometimes it could be zebra. So what we are dealing with now is a zebra. Like 0.01% of the patients, they have similar high blood sugar, but they are not type 1, they are not type 2. Next, please. So absence, these people, they have absence of autoantibodies for pancreatic antigens, right? So how do patients with MODY present? The patients with MODY often have one or more of following features: a strong family history of diabetes, as I told you, right? Just a few seconds back, a strong family history of diabetes, insulin independence. Most important is absence of autoantibodies, that means not type 1, because these people are young, so we think of type 1. Evidence of endogenous insulin production, the C-peptide is always positive or on the normal side. Next, please. So they are neither type 1 nor type 2. How do patients with MODY present clinically? Just look at the red things. Atypical for type 1 diabetes, absence of insulin resistance, that is type 2. And so type 1 absent, type 2 absent. So finally and the characteristic of type 2 is lack of obesity, the absence of acanthosis, normal triglyceride, elevated high density lipoprotein, that is HDL, and presence of monogenic beta cell form of diabetes. Next, please. This will indicate something different, like zebra. How do patients with MODY present clinically? The various genes involved and the associated clinical features. I'll just come back to you in a minute. So there are distinct phenotypes. You must understand this distinct phenotype word. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So the genes HNF1A, okay, and GCK, these two things, GCK is glucokinase and HNF1A is hepatic nuclear factor 4 alpha. These two genes, they practically constitute almost 100%. But what is more important, the prevalence and the clinical features is in HNF1A, you have to have, you will characteristically get postprandial sugar high, whereas in GCK you'll find plasma fasting sugar very high. These two things are very important. Rest of the things are extremely rare. We won't confuse you by talking about this thing. Next, please. So the diagnosis is made by a typical patient with MODY. They present with diabetes in the 2nd to 4th decade. Ideally, somewhere around 20, 25, a person will come to you, very thin, lean fellow. He will say he has got polydipsia, polyuria, and all these things, polyphagia, and all these classical features of looking at pointing toward diabetes. And you see their sugar is somewhere around 180, 200, 250, sometimes 300. And 2nd to 4th, usually it is in 2nd decade in urban areas. In rural areas it is little delayed. Oh my god. So they don't fit into either type 1 or type 2. You do get antibodies, you do all antibody works up and it's negative. You see they are little thin and lean. You think of type 2 diabetes, but they don't fit into type 2 diabetes, and probably you are confused, and then that is the way either you try to evaluate further probably, or send it to an endocrinologist, as Kapil said, probably to have a confirmed diagnosis, or even if you have confirmed your diagnosis, reconfirm with some endocrinologist or diabetologist who has got experience in this field. Usually we are not that experienced in this particular field, so it is always, at least in my practice, I always take the help of diabetologists or endocrinologists who have got a good exposure into this field. So yeah, you want me to go fast anyway. Patient with MODY have a subacute or incidental presentation without ketosis. So usually they do not develop ketosis as type 1. They usually have no insulin resistance as seen in type 2. Next, please. Can you go ahead? Yeah. So finally, if you see the features of typical age at diagnosis of HNF1, 1A or 4A MODY or HNF1B MODY, they are practically similar. The onset is 10 to 45 years. Ketones are very rare. First degree relatives is 50 to 60%. They are diabetic. Insulin resistance same as non-diabetic, both ways. Beta cell antibodies negative in both. C peptide after 3 years from diagnosis practically in normal range. So they are not fitting. You will appreciate they are not fitting in type 1. They are not fitting in type 2. The first line drug treatment, especially in HNF 1A and 4A, is low dose sulfonylurea, very low dose. If you give high dose sulfonylurea, they actually go into hypoglycemia. And in 1B MODY, usually metformin is indicated if the renal functions are good. Most of them, they have renal problem. As we see further, I'll show you further that some of them have got renal problem. So these two particular diabetes, HNF1A, HNF1B, practically they go hand in one. My slides are off. I don't know. Something has gone wrong. So finally, GCK MODY, it's like often undiagnosed, and practically the treatment is practically none. So nothing much to be worried about. Whether you diagnose it or don't diagnose it, nothing happens. In
Sir,
type 1 diabetes,
slides are on. You are able to see it, sir?
I can see it now.
Okay, fine.
So in type 1 diabetes, again, as all of you know, the ketones are present and beta cells, almost 80 to 90% are not there at the time of diagnosis, or practically 100%. And in type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is very common. And usually after 25 years of the typical age at diagnosis is after 25 years or after 40 years. And all the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance will be there. Next, please. The first line of treatment there is, of course, metformin in type 2. In type 1, it is insulin. Next, please. So, the important thing here is HNF4A MODY have hyperinsulinemia. So, insulin is more here. Insulin secretion is more here. That is a characteristic in utero, especially in utero. And that's how they get macrosomia at birth. That is, the birth weight is more than 4 kilogram. And it is very obvious to the gynecologist. Even sonologists can tell you that this particular people, they have probably diabetic in they are likely to get diabetes in future. And this is what is MODY. The moment the sonologist say macrosomia, it is usually MODY type of diabetes. So usually it is hypoglycemia transient in neonatal period. So that's why the moment the cord blood is seen, it shows hypoglycemia along with thyroid and all. If at all, if the mother has thyroid, they'll show even increased TSH. Next, please. Can I see the next slide? Yeah. So the hyperglycemia in GCK MODY, that is glucokinase MODY, is present throughout life, but it is not that high. It is asymptomatic and detected when blood glucose is measured. Coincidentally, in health checkup, you just see and sugar is borderline high. Usually the treatment is normal, either metformin or probably even without the treatment, these people have no problem. Next, please. So in some cases, other clinical features in combination with diabetes should prompt consideration of a unifying diagnosis. For example, HNF1B mutations are associated with renal cysts. I told you, HNF1A, HNF1B. 1B, you have to be very careful when you are giving metformin because they are usually associated with some kind of renal problem, usually renal cyst or polycystic kidney. And if you give probably metformin, you can make it worse. The creatinine can sharply increase and patient can go into early renal failure. So they usually have renal cysts, they have genitourinary abnormalities. These are congenital and this is mitochondrial diabetes, and sometimes it can present with deafness. The deafness could be either in the parents, where you have to be very careful in counseling, genetic counseling, but sometimes unfortunately the patients are born with deafness. You must have seen a movie of Sanjeev Kumar where the child was born deaf, and that's how the genetic counseling became important from that point onwards. Next, please. So here how do you this is algorithm which is very, very simple, and you must concentrate on this particular slide, very important one out of all the slides here, that if the diabetes onset, if someone develops diabetes less than 30 years, then you have to have a clinical assessment. So what you do fasting glucose, you do GADA, that is GAD antibodies, you do HbA1c, C-peptide, ketones if glucose is more than 15. Now if it is acute presentation, either it is acute or it is chronic, or a person is well and person is non-well. So if it is acute presentation, person is not looking well, see the ketone bodies. If ketone bodies are positive, they are type 1 diabetes. So if the person is apparently looking well and ketones are negative, then you have beta cell antibodies negative, you have normal BMI, there is no insulin resistance, then you can think of either young onset, you can think of mitochondrial diabetes, you can think of GCK Modi diabetes, you can think of HNF1A 4A Modi or HNF1B, which I told you just in previous slides. So apart from these four, there is type 1 on the left hand side, type 2 on the, so supposing a patient has got antibodies, okay, and ketone bodies, and patient has DK, then it is type 1. If patient has got all the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance, patient is obese, patient has acanthosis nigra, hypertension, NAFLD, dyslipidemia, PCOS, all signs of metabolic disorders, then it is type 2. But there is subset. This type 1 and type 2 will constitute almost more than 99%. These four together hardly consist of 0.1%. But one has to understand this, because if you can tackle this in a proper way by referring them to an endocrinologist, probably you can save a life, you can diagnose it properly and give a proper treatment so that patient's life can have a proper meaning. And can I see the next slide, please? I think there's something wrong. There is some technical hitch, I don't know. Probably the slides have got diabetes, HNF1, HNF2, I don't know what to call it.
Viraj, hello.
So meanwhile, let me tell you that HNF4A again is hepatic nuclear factor 4 alpha, GCY is glucokinase, and NFS, which we are going to introduce again shortly, is non-frame shift mutation. So if you can have this short form, which are going to have again and again, hepatic nuclear factor 4 alpha, GCY is glucokinase, NFS non-frame shift mutation.
Viraj, please check.
It is stuck up somewhere.
Hello.
I'll join in about 15 minutes, please, if you don't mind. Yeah.
No, just a second. Just a second.
Meanwhile, let me tell the audience that I am personally propagate, if you want to really remain healthy, 1 चम्मच कम करो, 1 चम्मच salt, 1 चम्मच घी, oil और 1 चम्मच sugar. अगर इतना कम करते हो तो I'm quite sure you can live 100 years. 1 चम्मच कम, salt, oil and sugar. If you can take this message home, I think I've done my job. Yeah. So finally, if at all you can understand that I mean, this is of technical purpose. You've seen type 1 diabetes, you've seen type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes are insulin resistant, type 1 has got beta cell antibodies and decay and ketones, and the rest of all these things where there is no insulin resistance, the ketones are not there. They are again classified into mitochondrial diabetes, very rare, where genetic testing is necessary. Asymptomatic, which is there, GCK Modi, no treatment is required, but genetics testing is a must. The third one is HNF1A 4A Modi. Again, genetic testing is must. Here the glycosuria is there, and usually CRP is less than 0.5. So here I want to, and they are sensitive to sulfonylurea. They react very well. They are controlled with very low dose of sulfonyl. In fact, a half of 0.5 of glimepiride I have used, and the sugar of 250 has come down in 3 days to 100 or even less than 100. Even sometimes we have to stop the drug. But here in today's scenario, this is very important because these people, they have got CRP which is less than 0.5. So the inflammatory marker which is characteristic in today's time of COVID, you have to be careful if at all you come across these kind of people. So you have to look forward to some other inflammatory markers like ferritin and others. So the other Modi is 1B. This is 1A, HNF1A, HNF1B. Now this 1B has additionally the problem of renal and genitourinary issues. So if you come across the same kind of issues along with renal complications, you can think of HNF1B Modi clinically if there is any renal cyst on sonography and all, and their LFTs are increased. So renal as well as hepatic functions are deranged. Then you can think of HNF1B Modi clinically, and you have to be careful when you are using metformin. Next, please. For obvious reasons, to protect their kidneys. So investigation, patient with HNF1B Modi, as I told you again, they will have renal and hepatic issues. So, and they have CRP which is low, I told you again. So mild fasting hyperglycemia and HbA1c less than 7.5% points towards GCK Modi. What is GCK Modi? I told you, it's just for all practical purposes, it is non-diabetic because the HbA1c is low, and it doesn't affect with or without treatment. They hardly require any treatment, very genuinely. So GCK Modi you can temporarily forget. You can remember only HNF1A Modi. HNF2B Modi also is going to, or HNF1B Modi also is going to be difficult because it has got its own complication, renal and hepatic. So best to be treated with not only with endocrinologists but with nephrologist also or hepatologist. Next, please. For all practical purposes, I'll tell you that HNF1B Modi, don't try to treat yourself, any physician. So, unfortunately, chronic hyperglycemia of any cause can eventually cause blood vessel damage. You all know, any hyperglycemia, anything. It's like fire. Whenever there is fire, fire will burn everything, whether it is fire with kerosene or petrol or anything. So fire is going to make damage. Similarly, any hyperglycemia is going to damage the blood vessels. So finally, if at all you are treating any diabetes, whether it is HNF, whether it is Modi, whether it is type 1, type 2, you have to see to it that patient maintains normoglycemic condition. The principal treatment goals for people with Modi is keeping the blood sugar as close as to normal. I mean, that means good glycemic control while minimizing other vascular risk factors. That means cholesterol and other thing, weight and everything, you know, all lifestyle changes. So they are the same for all known forms of diabetes. So finally, it goes in the same way. So fire has to be extinguished, whichever is the fire, type 1, type 2, Modi, non-Modi, anything. Next, please. So a referral to a monogenic diabetes, the moment you find that a person is not fitting into type 2 diabetes, not fitting into type 1 diabetes, you must refer this patient to a diabetologist or an endocrinologist to confirm, even though you have confirmed the diagnosis, to reconfirm the diagnosis. And when there are antibodies which are absent, when there are insulin resistance which is not seen, then automatically it qualifies for the same. Next, please. Next. So what is the treatment? Next, please. So as I said again, again I'm telling you that a small dose of SU. Small means I've seen even less than 0.5, even quarter of 0.5. So if don't try to make a mistake of giving 1 gram BD or something, patient will definitely go into hypoglycemia once you diagnose HNF1A and HNF4 MODY. So most patients, they respond well to treatment with very, very small dose of sulfonylurea, because they have got C peptide very high, so they don't require insulin even, they don't require anything. Otherwise, there is a temptation of, when you see a 17 years old girl, 15 years old boy, there is a temptation to start with insulin, but you must hold on to that particular temptation till you diagnose and confirm your diagnosis with someone else. Always better to confirm with your colleague. There is no evidence base for second line treatment, but sometimes after 2 decades, 3 decades, you will need metformin along with it. Next, please, to control the sugar. So role of glimepiride in MODY is well established, and glucokinase is a key enzyme in glucose sensing and glycemic regulation. In human mutations in the GCK gene cause maturity onset diabetes of the young. So if there is a mutation in the GCK gene, then there is another diabetes called MODY2. We know MODY1 or MODY. Now MODY2, which is a disease that is characterized by an early onset and persistent. This MODY2, if there is a mutation of GCK gene, glucokinase gene, then probably MODY2 will appear again. It is a very, very rare condition. Don't try to treat. Please take, again, as I said, help of a diabetologist. And the only characteristic is a persistent hyperglycemia, and you require a little more of. They usually behave like type 2 diabetes, so more of sulfonylurea and more of subsequently metformin they'll require. Next, please. So treatment of GCK NFS. What is NFS? Non-Fremschick mutation. I told you, non-Fremschick mutation. So GCK non-Fremschick, that is glucokinase non-Fremschick, is treated successfully with glimepiride, but they've usually tried to treat it with other agents, which I'll come to you in the next slide. Next, please. Glimepiride, reduces the fasting sugar very, very fast. So we have to be very careful in giving glimepiride at night. So glimepiride and liraglutide, both these agents were used, but the role of glimepiride was very good. Liraglutide gave rise to little complications, so liraglutide was not preferred in but it was tried in some people. On top of that, these people usually they have low BMI. So practically liraglutide has got no role here. Next, please. So friends, the 6 weeks treatment of liraglutide as well as 6 weeks treatment of with glimepiride was tried in both arms, and it was found out that glimepiride. So hypoglycemia effect was much better, which we wanted. Next. So linagliptin as an add-on treatment to glimepiride improved glycemic variability and control without increasing risk of hypoglycemia in patients. So when linagliptin was used in these particular people, the control was good without increasing hypoglycemia. So hypoglycemia was not there. As I said, with glimepiride and with sulfonylurea, there was a problem of hypoglycemia, but linagliptin was a good choice here. Next. So it was seen that the treatment with glimepiride has a stable weight neutral or even weight reducing effect. I am not convinced with weight reducing effect, but since it is mentioned in experimental group, I may accept it with a little bit of pinch of salt. So finally, this is something which is a research work, so I have to accept it. So most patients will have weight neutral, they had weight neutral, but some people, they had weight reducing effect, also as shown in this graph. Next, please. So modern SUs, that is glycoside and glimepiride, they are associated with a lower risk of all-cause and cardiovascular-related mortality compared with glibenclamide. You know, glibenclamide has a long half-life, and practically when I started my practice 40 years back, I think many deaths were reported with glibenclamide. Sometimes we had to sit as a houseman and register with the patient and intern as an intern with the patient for 3 to 4 days with IV glucose when they had glibenclamide toxicity or hypoglycemia induced by glibenclamide. Next, please. So there is no specific treatment is recommended for GCK Modi. I told you GCK Modi is as good as non-diabetic. The only exception for HNF1A Modi would be to avoid sodium glucose co-transporter. So SGLT2 are not indicated in HNF1A Modi only because inhibitors such as dapagliflozin has HNF1A deficiency already decreases SGLT2 expression. That's why they are not indicated in HNF1A Modi. Patients with HNF1B Modi are not sensitive to, so usually sulfonylureas are not utilized for HNF1B Modi and usually require insulin earlier than. So the only thing is in HNF1B Modi, as I told you, usually they have got renal cyst and they have got genitourinary malformations, they have got hepatic problem. So insulin is more instituted more earlier as compared to sulfonylureas, which are good for HNF1, HNF1B, no sulfonylurea. Next, please. Can I see the next slide, please? So the figure shows this is a very complicated figure. I hardly understand all these figures, but one thing I can tell you, the conclusion is figure shows that patients of all ages with GCK, that is glucokinase mutation, had mild hyperglycemia, mild, very mild. I mean, and as I said, GCK, you don't even I don't consider it as diabetic. Even if you miss it, you don't worry, nothing will happen. Next, please. So GCK, you don't worry, you just delete out of your mind. Next, just for the research sake. So HNF4A mutation beta cell dysfunction is progressive. Treatment is required. Low dose sulfonylurea, I told you, 12.5%. That means 1/4 of even tablet appears to be effective, which is similar to the response seen in HNF1A diabetes. In fact, treatment efficacy with sulfonylureas appear to be sustained even after 3 decades. So these people, their beta cells keep on functioning for 3. They don't die down easily, and patients, they do not require insulin very fast as compared to type 2 diabetes. Similar to those with HNF1A mutation, the homeostatic model assessment analysis suggested a marked beta cell defect in this subject, but there is no reduction in insulin sensitivity. So they have beta cell defect, but beta cells somehow last for a longer time, and there is no reduction in insulin sensitivity. So probably or practically sulfonylureas can tackle the sugar lifetime in these people. So if at all one has to have mutation or diabetes, they genetic diabetes, they will prefer HNF4A mutation, HNF4A diabetes. Next, please. So, my dear friend, I'm coming to an end, and if at all you don't want to understand HNF1, HNFB, and GCK, all these things, you know, NFS, and you don't want to get confused with diabetes, and you don't want diabetes at all, then this is what I would request. This is a non-medical thing, lifestyle changes. This burger and this Coca-Colas and this multitasking and overweight and no exercise and sitting down will definitely produce all these things, not only in you, but in your progeny also. Next, please. So, friends, stop this. Next, please.
Jagdish sir,
Stop this. Yeah. Next,
can
please.
we skip this, sir, because
Yeah.
there is a
Okay.
time
So you stop all these things. You keep it fast. I mean, can you do it faster? Yeah. Anger. Next, depression. So yeah. So you don't get heart attack. Be positive, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now I request Dr. Milind Devle sir to start with his presentation.
Sure. How much we have time now?
Yeah, it is half an hour, sir. Half an hour.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can't see Kapil.
Kapil, I'll take your leave. Thank you.
Yes, sir. No problem. No problem. Yes, Milind bhai, go ahead.
Yes, Kapil. Yeah, I am just
Yeah,
checking my first slide.
yeah, just a minute. This is yours only, no, sir?
Yeah, I got a first slide. Yeah. So now we treat diabetes very commonly, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. When the complications comes with us, that a patient comes with the cardiovascular disease history, or he has a family history of the cardiovascular disease, what to go ahead with such a patient in the type 2 diabetes. Now, this is a imaginary case, though he's a 42 years old male, looks to be lean and thin. You see his weight is just 55 kg and height is too good, 160 centimeter. But till he is facing the HbA1c is 8%, it is not a typical obesity-induced type 2 diabetes. So something is going wrong. Though he is on the 1000 milligram of the metformin, till his sugars are not that much controlled. And he has a bad family history that his father died at the age of the 60 years. So it shows there is something big cardiovascular disease problem, maybe family related, hereditary related, or something genetic disorders. Now, going with the second drug in such a patient is always problem. So, what comes after the metformin? Now, this patient is not on the high dose of the metformin. He has just touched to the 1 gram of the metformin, hardly the 500 mg BD. So, you can increase the dose of the metformin and you can add any one of the drugs which is considered as a second line drug. It can be a sulfonylureas, it can be pioglitazone, DPP-4 inhibitor, SGLT2, GLP-1, or you can go directly on the insulin if the patient is willing for the insulin. So all the options are open with you when you have uncontrolled diabetic patient with this type of history. Now these things are always taken in the consideration when you add what after the metformin, that is the age of the patient, what is his glucose level, whether you want weight gain, you want to lose the weight, whether patient is thin, obese, his economical status, hypoglycemia, then other comorbid condition, and the convenience of the patient as well as the doctor also. So if we took consideration is that all these things, there are the few guidelines given by EASD, ADA, then the NICE guidelines. But look, here you have to always worried about the three type of the main condition, which I can say a pathological condition, which one of that is the ASCVD. Second is your CKD, chronic kidney disease. And third is the heart failure when you want to choose your second drug. Okay, lot of guideline, though they says that you can choose this guideline or that other one guideline, the COOT trial, cardiovascular outcome trial, clear cut shows that the SU is such a wonderful drug. You can take it as a second line drug after the metformin. Now, here there are the 2-3 problems which we consider always when we talk about the second line of the drug. Whether we are worried about the hypoglycemia, whether we are worried about the weight gain of the patient, we are worried about the weight loss of the patient, or there are some certain other major issues like which we discuss ASCVD, heart failure, or the CKD. Now, if we want to go in a detail of these things, there are the big guideline and algorithm given. Now, I am not going in detail of this algorithm. You can read these slides, but simply think when there are the pathological condition, when there is ASCVD, when there is a heart failure or the CKD, what should be your guideline for the second drug? Or physiological condition where you are worried about the hypoglycemia or the weight gain or the weight loss. And third condition is where you are worried about the cost of the patient. Only there are the three conditions. One is pathological, physiological, and cost of them. Okay, so if there is ASCVD, what it shows? It shows when you want to choose the second drug, it should be from the GLP-1 or the SGLT2 inhibitors. Maybe sometimes patient thinks that the GLP-1 may be the injectable, maybe the cost may be the issue, but that is one of the proven drug in the ASCVD. Now, if the patient is CKD or the heart failure, I will preferably go for the second line of the treatment as SGLT2 inhibitors, because other than the diabetic, it is a more a cardiometabolic drug which give a diuretic effects and reduce also your heart failure and other problems in this patient. Even it control your blood pressures. Now, if you are talking about the second line of drug in the hypoglycemia, then the best drug is the euglycemic drugs, which do not affect or they works with the high glucose level or only on the hyperglycemia. That is, you are the DPP-4 inhibitors, or you can even choose GLP-1 or even the AGIs in the Indian public, which is not mentioned here. But AGI are the good drug, which is receptor inhibitors. They are the quite good drugs when you are talking about the postprandial hyperglycemia. Now, if we are talking about the need of the minimizing the weight, you want a weight reduction drug, then the true drugs are the choice here. One is the GLP-1 inhibitors, GLP-1 an antagonist or agonist, or your SGLT2 inhibitors. And now, till the cost is a major issue, and you want certain drug which balance all these things with the efficacy, safety, and cost, till I will think the sulfonylureas is the best in the country like India or all over the world. It is one of the oldest proven drug in reducing and most efficacious drug. Whether now there are a lot of problems about against the safety of this drug, but if I goes further, I will discuss all these things in a 5 to 10 minutes. So, what this Canadian guideline says, it says that all the drugs are open, including the SU. Only they are worried in the elderly patient and the CKD patients, where they are not advising the SU drugs. But the TIL says that when you want a rapid control of the sugars, then the SU is the one of the best drugs. And WHO's guideline, or what the WHO it says that you decide according to the patient or the personalize your treatment. Whether you want to get on the weight of the patient, then go for the SGLT2 inhibitors or the DPP-4 inhibitors. If you are worried about the hypoglycemia, then go for the DPP-4 inhibitors or TZD. Or if still you are worried about the other things like weight gain and all these things, and avoid insulin and all these things. If but if we talk about the in a CVD or mortality risks, then all this second line of the drugs, there is no major as such difference they find out. One is going above it, but it become a drug of choice when such a comorbid condition comes against the diabetic patient. So it is a fixed near about since years together that the metformin is a drug of the choice, and you can increase the dose of the metformin when you are using the monotherapy, starting from the lowest dose where patient is tolerating, and then increase it slowly. And the conditions comes where the patient still not tolerate the metformin even at 500 to the 1000 grams, then you can easily go on the second line of the drugs like a DPP-4 inhibitor or the SU. And best policy when you find out the HbA1c is going above the 7.5 or 8, it is touching 8, then all guidelines says you should go with the combination therapy. Maybe if it is more than 8.5, you go with the insulin. But till the preferable drugs in the second line is still go with the GLP-1 and SGLT2 inhibitors. Now, even this NICE guideline also mention about your alpha glucosidase inhibitors, which we discussed AGI. Okay, even they recommended SU is preferential over the SGLT2 inhibitor and GLPs when we talk about the cost effectiveness, efficacy, and the safety of the drugs. And lot of other guidelines like Diabetic Australia, SEMDA, Dutch, Italian guideline, all these guidelines go with the second line drug as a SU. So these are the lot of guidelines which are comparing this combination, how to go with this. But till if I want to say, if you take AAC guideline, ADA guideline, or BARIMS, all may have the different type of the opinion. But till they mention the SU can be a preferable drug after the metformin. There may be some difference of the opinion that may be there. Maybe some talk about the weight gain, or there some may worried about the hypoglycemia. But when you see all the point of the safety, efficacy, and cost effectiveness, where is your nice guidelines says when you think that the HbA1c is going more than 7.5, you want to add some more drugs. Even RSDI recommended the combination therapy when you start. Then you can go with easily with the SU when you have a second drug after the metformin. So I'm not going in detail with each guideline, but all the guidelines recommended indirectly that SU can be a drug of choice after the metformin as a second. So here there is a problem of some like a ischemic preconditionings or something like an anti-platelet type of the activity or the aspirin type of the activity. And yes, glimepiride, the SU like drug proven all over the other type of the SU that it has some effect on the ischemic precondition and it do not interfere in the ischemic precondition. Hypoglycemia and weight gain, if we compare with other type of the SU, when we discuss SU, now I'm not going with the glibenclamide or all other drugs. Now the two main SUs are remain here is the glycoside and glimepiride. If I want to talk about a glycoside, it's a good drug, but it's not as efficacious as the glimepiride. What the glimepiride had the effect. So, in all observational study as well as the randomized studies, clear cut shows the cardiovascular safety of the sulfonylureas or SU or this clear cut your glimepiride is a comparable with other drugs, even like the linagliptins. That is the last your Carolina trials. So, if we come a lot of landmark trials, if we go through, like UK PDS, Accord, Advance, which happens before us, ADOPT trials, big trials, these are the VADT trials. These all trials was done with the metformin and sulfonylurea. Some were done against the insulin, some were done with the other type of the drugs. But they could find out that sulfonylurea is one of the cardio safety drugs and can be used in the second line. Now, this was a very short 47 subject was studies in exenatide, sitagliptin and glimepiride for the 6 months. And their main attention was to find out anti-apoptic action of the beta cell and the beta cell destruction, where the SU is always called as they are working on the tired horse and making them to secrete more and more insulin by the beta cells. But they could find out that key secretion as well as the anti-apoptotic value of this SU is not inferior than the exenatide or the sitagliptin. This may be a small trial, but it shows a comparable results with others. And if we talk about the biphasic action of insulin, where the insulin start working within the 10 minutes, comparing your out decreasing down your sugar levels for next 15 to 20 minutes, and the second postprandial effects comes within the 30 to 40 minutes and which is where continue in the both phasic level. So if you see before and after the treatment, the reduction in the requirement of the insulin is not that much high, which is required to decrease the peripheral resistance, insulin secretion, and carry out the smooth action of the sulfonylureas. So secretion of the insulin by the sulfonylureas in type 2 diabetes is a really good biphasic distributed, and it's works in the first phase as well as the second phase. If you see the treatment given by the glimepiride, what is the condition before and after in the first phase and the second phase on the hyperglycemia. So quite good reduction and comparable p-value. So you can easily find out there is a good reduction. And what was the problem created with the glycoside, that it is a very poor drugs, do not have that good efficacy in the reduction of the HbA1c and it was compared with the less efficacious glycosides. And always they try to show that DPP-4 is a comparable or non-inferior to the glycoside. But if compare with the glimepiride, if you see efficacy, there is a quite big difference in A1C reduction. The cost, if we compare with the DPP-4, it is the lesser than 1/4 of the cost of the DPP-4 inhibitors. Then cost effectiveness is much more. One thing is again, when you have a drug which has a good efficacy or it is a strong drug, then the chances of the adverse effects are always there. Like there can be a chances of the hypoglycemia, but if it is taken in a proper condition, the food is taken within that 10 to 15 minutes after the SU, then definitely the chances of the hypoglycemia get decreases. Or where we are adding sometime metformin with the SU, sometimes we advise to take it after the food when we find out the patient cannot maintain, or what happens sometimes he take the drugs and he forget to take his the meal, and that is the big problem where the patient goes in the hypoglycemia or delayed, or the lunch become delayed due to some reason or some guest or some working. Okay, cardiovascular if you see a CVD, cardiovascular diseases, and decrease in that, the sulfonylureas with that activity like which will decrease the preconditioning, lesser hypoglycemic effect or antiplatelet type of the effect, it has definitely decreases the cardiovascular disease or the cardiovascular risks. Even the reduction of the glycemia, if we compare compare the stable weight loss in these patients. Now we always talk about that whenever we use a SU, there is always a patient seems hypoglycemia, and that you prevent to biting, or in view of not getting hypoglycemic, they eat more and they put on the weight. Yeah, definitely it is. But when the patient is totally motivated and his HbA1c is well controlled, he has given a proper dose of the SU with the proper diet, we definitely find out that there is no as such increase in the weight or there is a weight reduction. So if we move toward even the insulin secretion and the glycemia, you can find out the SU is quite comparable with other other SUs like glibenclamide, which I don't want to go and discuss because I always compare only glycoside and glimepiride, and I forget little bit that glibenclamide and all other which has a huge hypoglycemic effect. Adiponectin levels, if we talk, always this insulin resistance comes with the decrease in the adiponectin level. So we need to maintain this adiponectin level. And SU do not have that much harmful effect on the adiponectin level. And these studies up to the 12 weeks has shown, maybe a less subject, 17 subject has chosen in this study, but he has shown it throughout, try to maintain the HbA1c reduction. So if we are coming in shortcut with the meta-analysis of the effect on safety of the glimepiride and DPP-4 inhibitors associated the metformin as a second line in type 2 diabetes, it clearly shows the HbA1c reduction. Patient treated with the glimepiride have a 12% greater reduction than the DPP-4 inhibitors. It is not like that DPP-4 inhibitors are superior. They had shown non-inferiority trial, but that was with glycoside, not with glimepiride. Even the meta-analysis shows the favorable results of the glimepirides. The odd ratio was the 1.14. The association of glimepiride and metformin produces a reduction of the 0.21, and it is greater than the DPP-4 inhibitor plus metformin. It is always seen that hardly it is 0.8 to 1% reduction in the HbA1c, where we can touch up to the 2% reduction in the HbA1c with the SU and the metformin. Significant fever dropout. if you maintain his diet, his proper timing of the taking of the SU, then I couldn't find episodes of the hypoglycemia. That is one of the major cause of the dropout. So dropout decreases as well as the hypoglycemia decreases, and lot of population based studies that have shown if diet is a proper, yes, it is an efficacious drug, it is a potent drug. If you are not taken a proper diet, definitely you will have the hypoglycemia. So I am moving little bit fast because nothing to discuss about hypoglycemia. I am not worried in SU. What the guidelines says, the cardiovascular safety and SU, this was the meta-analysis. And it again clear cut shows that cardiovascular risks, which was shown to be increased with the SU, instead of there is a decrease due to the mainly the preconditioning, not interfering like with preconditioning conditioning effect or with like a antiplatelet effect given by the sugar. And basic, the sugar control is much more important than anything else. Here the numbers has some value. So it is the same, vice versa, that SU do not show the increase in the CV mortality risks, and which are seen in the meta-analysis. Now, we had seen this comparison already. Yeah. So if we come with the Carolina trial, lastly then, where they always talk about the DPP4 inhibitors
Hello, Milind sir.
Dr. Milind?
Sir has lost the connection.
Okay. I think, sir, Carolina is anyway. There is a next presentation. Hello.
So we'll just wait for a minute if Milind is coming back.
Okay, sir. Sir, he is just re-login.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is back.
Sorry for the disturbance. I was logged out. I don't know how. But I think next topic is going with greater speaker Kapil on Carolina. Am I audible, Kapil? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible.
Dr. Kapil, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, so I will keep this trial for you. Okay. And in summary, I will say that it's really a comparable drug when we talk about all these conditions like AS, CVD, CKD, or even the heart failure. May you have to choose as per the subject's second drug of the choice in diabetic patient, but SU has till its roles in the Indian market in efficacy, safety, and cost. Thank you, and hand over to Kapil.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Milind bhai, for that overview of sulfonylureas and their role in managing diabetes. Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's move very quickly to what is Carolina trial. I'll be very fast. Maybe I'll try to finish in 5 minutes. So going ahead, this was a background. When choosing medication to manage type 2 diabetes, you have to actually monitor 2-3 things nowadays. It is not like old type 10, 20 years back where you have to just come down sugar. No, you have to look at the risk factor, which are cardiovascular risk, which are potency for producing hypoglycemias, also on body weight, also cost, also availability, also renal parameter, and so on and so forth. So there are so many things which you need to understand before actually you write down a drug for a particular patient. So sulfonylurea and DPP-4, which are the most common the drugs what we use in our clinical practice. So one need to understand whether they are comparable, whether they are interchangeable, or whether they can be exchanged for each other. So that is where very important. And in a country like India, where cost is a major factor plus availability, we need to understand before actually we write what is to be right for the patient. So if you see the objective and study design, the Carolina, the main objective was to compare long-term CV safety of linagliptin vis-a-vis glimepiride in a patient with early type 2 diabetes. How early? Probably in the 40s, and increased CV risk, obviously more sicker patient. So that is very important. So you are comparing two drugs which are from a different class, but in a given patients who are more sick and who have got early diabetes, like linagliptin versus glimepiride. So there were 6,000 patients, they were equally randomized. The CV risk were very typical. The criteria has to be either of these 3 or 4. That is previous vascular disease, evidence of vascular related end organ damage, age more than 70 years. I think that is most important, age more than 70 years, and obviously more than 2 severe risk factors. But that is very important. And all these patients, they were taken, with the A1C of at least, around 8.5, and they were then put into a trial equally, linagliptin vis-a-vis glimepiride. So that is very important. And time to first occurrence of any of the following component, as in primary composite endpoint, that is 3-point MACE, that is adverse like CV death, including stroke and total or a fatal myocardial infarction, non-fatal MI, and non-fatal stroke. So these were the primary 3-point MACE. That is what we all do in all our trials. Okay, so this was enrollment. I've told you how do you bifurcate these patients. So I'll just skip this slide. So the inclusion should at least have one of these criteria, that is previous vascular complication. Either means patient has either got a MI or a stroke or a peripheral arterial or vascular disease, evidence of end organ damage either in the form of maybe kidney, stroke, neuropathy, whatever, age more than 70 years, so more sicker patient, 2 or more traditionally severe risk factor, maybe probably diabetes or smoking or alcohol, whatever, with or without metformin background therapy, include patient contraindication to metformin in renal impairment. So that was the criteria, and the comparison drug was 5 mg of linagliptin vis-a-vis 4 mg of glimepiride. So these were the 2 arms which were compared, and there was a 3-point MACE, what I have told you here exactly. So these are the main inclusion criteria. Now at least 2 or following severe risk factor, which include basically type 2 diabetes, which is at least a decade old, at least 10-year-old. Then your systolic BP has to be more than 140. That is very important. Currently, daily cigarette smoking, that is another one of the risk factor, and LDL cholesterol, which is more than 135. So these are the at least 2 of these risk factors. If they are there, then you are probably in for that Carolina trial. And obviously, patients who are more than 40, less than 85, BMI less than 45. So all were matched very properly in the 2 arm, and the trial was designed. And what we have found is very, very interesting. Now this primary endpoint or key secondary outcome and other secondary or tertiary endpoint, you can see that they were more or less same. I'll tell you what are the same points. So just moving ahead. So time to occurrence of the endpoint based on the regression analysis. So these are all complicated terms, forget about this. But the most important point what I want to show is that the median treatment exposure was almost 6.3 years, so almost 6 years. So it was a very well conducted long-term trial, which is good enough for 6 years. And what it demonstrated is that there is a non-inferiority for 3-point MACE of lina versus glimepiride in early type 2 diabetes with increased CV risk, with an HR hazard ratio of 0.98 and a confidence interval of 95%, which is good enough for any trial to be a good trial. So what it was that HR or hazard ratio was 0.91 for all-cause mortality. It was 1 for severe mortality. That means it was equal for severe mortality. And it was 0.82 for non-severe mortality. So that is very important. So main safety finding of this Carolina trial was that the frequency of adverse event, serious adverse event, and adverse event leading to discontinuation of the study drug were comparable between the two groups. That include hypoglycemia as a major factor as compared to both drug, and there was a predefined hypoglycemia, means the level was decided previously before the trial started, and the risk of hypoglycemia was increased early and sustained across the entire dose of glimepiride. So that was very important. So Carolina result, I think Milind sir has already told you, but just look at the comparison. Just look at the primary endpoint on the left hand side. The blue one is a Lina and the yellow one is glimepiride. Hardly you can make any difference. Hardly. That means they both were comparable, at least for a primary endpoint, that was 3-point MACE. Obviously, in conclusion, all patients with type 2 diabetes and elevated CV risk, the DPP-4 inhibitor like linagliptin was non-inferior to sulfonylurea like glimepiride on prevention of major adverse cardiovascular event over a median period of 6 years. That means if you are targeting CV risk factor for your diabetic patient and you want to write a drug, you can either go with glimepiride or you can go with the linagliptin. The CV endpoint will be same for both the group. Now you have to decide what are the other factors where you will have DPP-4 or whether you will have a glimepiride. Obviously, two very important points, that glimepiride is a potent drug. It will increase the insulin secretion from your beta cell. Therefore, you have got a high chance of getting hypoglycemia. Vis-a-vis linagliptin, which is an DPP-4, which has got a insulin or incretin axis. So neurohumoral axis, what is important. So you will have a less side effect as compared to, less hypo as compared to glimepiride, that we all know in our clinical practice. So that is something which we need to understand. So cardiologists can be reassured about the CV safety of glimepiride. That is, we all know. Ischemic preconditioning, what Dr. Milind sir has already told you, it is very good with glimepiride. It is not very good with glime or glibenclamide or glyburide, which are the older drugs, but it is good with glimepiride. And linagliptin has a robust CV safety data as compared to or in comparison with glimepiride in the terms of less weight gain as well as less hypoglycemia. So it has got both ischemic reconditioning effect, less hypoglycemia, less weight gain, which we all want in our CV patients also. And there is a good safety and tolerability, which is very important. And it has been shown over a period of 6 years. So that was very important. So moving ahead, so Carolina has a truly unique trial design, we all know. So TICOS, Sevier, TIMI, Examine, they have compared all other DPP-4, but Carolina has linagliptin, and it was compared with sulfonylurea, which is a very common drug what we use, while other 3 trials have used basically placebo as a control group. And this trial was at least good amount of period, that for 6 years. The most important thing is that it was started in early diabetic patients and also in a patient who are a little sicker patients. So that was very important take-home message for me at least. So all this trial, what I've shown you, so that has again proven a point that it has got a potential cardiovascular benefit, whether it is a linagliptin or a glimepiride. So that is very important. And obviously, primary outcome was very same as compared to this. At least, however, the main conclusion from Carolina is very clear that at least one sulfonylurea, that is glimepiride, is not guilty of increasing short-term cardiovascular risk. A lot of people, a lot of cardiologists are debated. They don't write glimepiride or they have got some reservations about glimepiride. But this trial actually tears apart everything and just show that it has got a good CV safety data, even in a patient who are sicker or has got a multiple comorbidity or has got a more than 2 CV risk factor and was carried out over a period of 6 years. So that way it again boosts your confidence in writing glimepiride in your patient. So that was very important. Next I want to show is that I think this is my concluding slide, that Carolina study were given glimepiride in the dose of 4 milligram, which was step up in a particular way. 35% of patients have established CVD. 1/3 of your patient were having established CVD. 34% were more than 1/3 were more than age of 70 years. So that way they were very sick patient. 18% had an estimated GFR of less than 60 ml. Again, very important point, because a lot of our older diabetic patient will have less or will have some kind of CKD, so less GFR. So that was again tested very well in this trial. And there are not patients who are sensible physician will prescribe glimepiride 4 milligram. That is very important. They are not going beyond 4 milligram, and incidence of severe hypoglycemia, severe means which require hospitalization, were 2.2%, and the incidence of hospitalization due to hypo was 0.9%. So that is another very important point. I think it clears out a lot of your clutter from your mind, that this sulfonylurea is a very highly hypoglycemic drug, or very potent hypoglycemic drug. It will cause a lot of hypos and admission and further and so on and so forth. But I think this trial actually have shown that there is a confidence in writing sulfonylurea, obviously with all precautions, in a proper dose, in a proper step-up manner, with proper guidelines, in a given patient, in a given choice, that it doesn't causes that much of hypo. Plus, it doesn't cause that much of CV, not safety, or basically it's a more of a CV safety as compared to linagliptin and other things. So that again shows that you can write very well sulfonylurea given in a patient. So that is very important message from Carolina, that 85% reduction relative risk of severe hypoglycemia, and it was having a good CV outcome. So in and all, in a short summary, what I tried to told you, that Carolina was a very well conducted trial which compared Lina versus glimepiride, and it has shown that they are both non-inferior to each other. You can write either of those, but yes, in clinical practice, we all know, we were very skeptical about writing glimepiride for longer duration of period, and probably patients who are very comorbid, having a lot of CKD or a lot of ischemic heart disease, or maybe a bypass patient or a post-PASTI patient. But I think it has done a good job in Carolina, where it has shown that it will improve your CV. It will not worsen, at least if it doesn't improve, it will not worsen the outcome of your CV safety. So that is what is Carolina is all about. So thank you very much for the patient listening. So if there are any questions, then me and Milind bhai can answer some of them. We are running short of time, so quickly 5 minutes of discussion. If there are any questions, otherwise we'll wind it up.
So far, sir, I think there is no question from the audience.
Good. So people are also hurry. They are also need
Yes.
to. So I think we should end it here, and I thank you, Jagdisha sir. I think he has left, but he has done a good job. A very rare topic of MODY. We hardly see any patient, but yes, we need to understand. We need to know what is this terminology, what is HNF1A, 4A, 1B, GCK, MODY2, NFS, and all other stuff. And also thank you to Milind bhai for giving an insight of how do you try to, or what is the second drug to use after metformin. It all depends not only on your choice, but it all depends on patient choice also. It all depends on patient comorbidity also. And also thank you, Alkem, for giving this platform for all of us to express our our concerns, our thought, and our practice. We all know the science has to meet with the practicality, and that is what we try to do here on this platform. So thank you once again. Thank you everyone.
And thank you, Kapil, for good moderation.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
I take this opportunity to thanking both of you for making this session very interactive and informative. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, sir. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.